Hi. Okay, so Luke 6, um, discussion questions, right? Application questions. And so we start with Jesus is the Lord of the Sabbath. Um, and I like this question the way they phrased it because I think it's better than how I was discussing it in Bible study. It says the Pharisees focused on rules rather than the needs of people. And so that's just a good way to summarize what they were doing. It says, do you ever struggle with prioritizing religious traditions over love and compassion? And even as I'm reading that, I think that it more helps us understand the context of or like the situation that they were in by hearing, oh, okay, what was happening there was the religious leaders were prioritizing traditions and rules over loving others and compassion for others. And this is where Jesus is like, why do you have rules then? And this is where we get confused with God. We think, why does God have rules? And we don't understand that God's rules are loving and compassionate. But then man makes rules that don't have love and compassion in them at all, right? It's like the misunderstanding. And this is where the Pharisees are actually able to use the law to justify their meanness, right? They're using the law as the excuse as to why they're not kind to people. And this is where Jesus is calling it out. And this is where, again, people misunderstand because they see how humans abuse power and how humans make rules and misinterpret rules and use rules against us, that it causes them to think God is that way. And that's completely incorrect because God's rules are always putting love and compassion first. That's why, like, what he told us to do deals with our conscience, deals with how we operate as humans, how we like love each other, which is what we talked about in this chapter too later on. But just to understand that that's what they were doing. That they, when they were nitpicking on the Sabbath, it was them saying it's more important to follow these rules than it is to be kind to people. And Jesus is like, why would you even have rules that prevent you from being kind to people? Like, what is the point of a rule? Right? And rules should be to protect people and to cause there to be harmony, right? That kind of thing. And so when it asks, are you struggling with that, right? Do you put religious traditions over compassion for others? And maybe that is you, right? Maybe you're Orthodox or you're in some type of, denomination where you do actually struggle. Like if you're still dealing with the religiosity, the religious spirit, and you're not yet in relationship with Christ, maybe this applies to you because you realize, whoa, I'm putting religion first. I just can't imagine. I just don't even know what religious rules there are that because I'm so much in a relationship with the Lord. It's like, I don't even know what religious rules there are that would prevent you from being kind to someone. But obviously, this is an example. And so I almost think of it as more applicable today of like, what excuses do you make for not being kind to people? Like, what is preventing you? How do you justify yourself? And it could be that there's, I think of division, prejudice, right? Stereotypes, races, cliques, like all these things that people create to where, but that's still not necessarily like a rule, but it's more like we justify why we're not being kind to a person. Um, I'm trying to imagine if there's any other scenario, like maybe you're someone's manager, and so like your thought is like, that's outside of my role. Like I'm in a professional environment. I can't be gracious, something like that. Like you're justifying like the rules. The rule is that you have to be here on time or you get, you know, um, I don't know what a discipline would be, right? But it's like some sort of disciplinary action. And maybe you hear the person and they're like, well, my daughter's sick, so I was late today, or like my whoever just passed away or something, and you choose to follow the rules over being gracious versus realizing that the rules are in place, right? It's what do they say? The exception, not the rule. That there are exceptions. Like there's moments, there's opportunities where like kindness matters so much more, right? Kindness always matters more. And the rules should just be in place so that people know order. There's a way that things always operate. And I do understand that people think, well, if we break the rules, then you start to lose control because then people start to take advantage of the rules and that kind of thing. And it's like, okay, well, then that's on you to continue to keep the rules. Because people can't make excuses for it every day, right? Continue to keep the rules so that things are again, unbiased, I guess, right? Because it's not fair if one person's taking advantage of the rules all the time and everyone else is following them. So when you start to see that happening, so that's where it can become hard, when it comes to people and management. But just anyway, is there just what it could be that you are holding on to rules, even if they mistreat a person, right? Versus realizing that like rules should always be in place to protect people. And especially in this sense, it's God. So it's like they're taking God's rules to use against people when God's rules or law has always been to love people, to help people. And so when it says the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath, this is how can you allow Jesus to be Lord over your rest, time, and priorities? What I like about rest is it's almost, just again, how can he be Lord of your life? How can he be the king of your heart, where he leads? And so when it says that he's Lord over your rest, and remember, rest is not sleep, laziness, it's authority. You realize you have your authority in him. You have this authority in your life. You are still governing. You are still accountable and responsible for decisions. So you are alert. You are vigilant. You are sober-minded, right? Of sound mind. You are leading, but he's your leader, I guess, obviously, right? It's like he's your leader, but you realize you have autonomy, right? You are ultimately the one that has a will as well. And so letting him be the Lord over you being seated in authority over your time, which means like you don't try to take things into your own hands and control and force things to happen, but you have patience and you understand things happen in due season and that there's an appointed time and that there's a ripening that happens with things. And so you kind of backing off and you trust the Lord. And so when we say trust his timing, it's not just like he wakes up one day all of a sudden and decides. It's like things are in time. Timing is happening because things are unfolding. And so being patient as things unfold. And then also, again, your priorities, meaning if he's Lord of your life, he is your priority. He is prior to all things. He is your love. He is your preference. You include him. You follow him, right? You go where he goes. It's not this, certain time of day that you decide to include the Lord. It's that every waking moment of your being, you are in union with him. You're in a relationship with him. And so what he says, right, even like we read in the end of this chapter, just obedience. When you hear his voice, you respond. When you hear his instruction, you obey, right? So how can you, and is he Lord of your life? And if not, then what is Lord of your life? Because something is. And then just how can you, even maybe you just speak it, that you wake up in the morning and you say, you are the Lord of my life. I love you, God. Thank you for another day, right? But just even saying it, you're the Lord of my life. Maybe even in the midst of situations, you just go to that. I also think I was thinking of this the other day, another good one is just when you say God is good. Maybe it's like before you go into a meeting, you just say out loud to yourself, God is good. Before, your phone starts ringing and you look and you see that name that you don't want to see and you just go, God is good. All right, but you just bring him in, you affirm. And another one could be, you are Lord of my life, right? Just constantly being aware and surrendering it to him. And so, right, him healing and how it angered the religious leaders. And so, have you ever faced opposition for doing what is right? I would also say, have you ever been the opposer? Have you ever been the one that for some reason, and this is why I talked about before we were transformed, we're that person. We're the one that when good happens, we're like judgy. Like we think, why are you doing that? Or what do you get out of it? Right? Like we can't even just accept someone's generosity. We think there's a string attached. We think that they're a pushover and we walk all over them. And you know what I mean? It's like we come from that place where we're like, what are you doing trying to bring good into this? Because our guilty conscience doesn't like it. We don't like someone being good because then it shows that goodness is an option, goodness exists, and we're not choosing it. But so have you faced opposition for doing what is right? If you don't stand up for what's right, why? Right? What are you afraid of? If you've had moments and you think, gosh, because of the resistance, because I was afraid to stand up for what's right, right? So why were you? When you're in those moments and you know the right thing to do and you don't do it, and maybe going forward you will. Maybe after this, you're like, okay, the next time something like that happens and I feel pressure and I feel my heart beating and I know I need to do the right thing, I just do it. And I trust the outcome that's going to come. I trust the truth and the reality that happens from that. So when you've done what's right, stood up for what's right, have you faced opposition? And usually you will. But trust that the opposition means that those are the people that are doing what's wrong, right? Like you want to be on the right side. And it is totally okay that there is opposition to that, because all that does is reveals that all those people are in the wrong. If you're telling the truth and people get upset, all that shows is they are the ones that are in the lie. And so it shouldn't phase you. It literally shouldn't even phase you. But then also, like I said, have you struggled to do what is right? Like you didn't even get to do what was right because of the opposition. And then also, have you ever been the person that when someone stood up and did what was right, you got upset about it? Okay. So, I like this. Before choosing his disciples, Jesus spent the night in prayer. And that is so true. I noticed that when we read it. I was like, that's kind of cool. It says he spent the whole night praying. So how can you follow this example when making important decisions? Praise the Lord. Thank you for that clarity, God. Because that's even like telling me what to do. Like, having big decisions coming up and realizing, like, can you just spend the night with the Lord in prayer? Like we do these things routinely where it's like, oh, I'm going to pray before a meal, or I'm going to pray at the Bible study, or I'm going to pray at church, or these things. But again, think about quality time hanging out with your best friend. Do you ever just spend a night in and just worship and just pray and just be with him? Right? Like hours, but not hours where you're sitting there and you feel obligated and you're like, this is the worst. This is taking so long. You just are free and you're safe and it's wholesome, right? It's just so pure. But there's power in it too. You realize there's power. He is with you. But how can you follow this? Think about any important decisions you have coming up and maybe plan on doing this the night before, right? Put it on your calendar. Say, well, I've got this big decision coming up, or you have a big decision right now. And so maybe you just pick a day this week and you say, I'm going to spend the night praying to the Lord and make it fun. Like I said, put on a playlist and worship and sing and dance and just be with him and commit your night to it. You're not going to be distracted. You're not going to be sitting there and then wish if someone texts you and says, hey, let's go meet up for dinner. It's like, no, I already have plans, right? That's what I think is so funny too. I've had to teach a lot of my friends this was you say, I already have plans, even if your plans are that you've carved out solitude, right? Your plans are to be by yourself. Plans don't have to be, oh, I have a different event I'm going to. Sometimes my plans are that like I need intentional quiet time, right? And especially time with the Lord. We've asked this before, but it's just a good reminder, right? Jesus chose humans, people, right? Fishers and tax collectors and zealots and just normal people. And so how does this encourage you about his calling you, right? What he's going to accomplish through you. He accomplished this, the gospel. They built the church. They've spread to billions of people through generations. Just 12, right? These people. And so again, he calls all of us, right? He calls us. He's calling us higher. He's calling us forth. And we can accomplish things. It says he will finish what he started in you, the good work he started in you, and that he accomplishes through us. We are the hands and feet. We are the vessel. We participate with him if we're operative, if we're available. But by being available, it's God working through you. It's his glory. You're the vessel. It's his glory. You don't have to claim it, and you don't have to take credit for it, and don't take credit for it. But that you're saying, I'm the available hands and feet. I think about Noah. He said yes to building an ark. It's because he said, yes, I'm the hands and feet. He had no idea how to build an ark. The Lord told him how to build an ark. The Lord's like, I will tell you if you're available. If you are the hands that are willing to build it, I will give it to you. Like I will show you what we're going to build. How cool is that? Right? You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to be, the most like, I don't know enough about Noah's character, but it might have been like, he wasn't the most like fluffy guy that was just like, a cheerleader to everybody in town. He might have been a brute. Like he might have been rough around the edges, but he said yes, he was willing. I think about like Peter and just right how we see all these different people's personalities, but how he's still calling. He's calling us now. There is still stuff to be done here and now for the kingdom of God. We are of use. We are productive in the sense that we produce fruit. Productivity is not just our own set of task lists that we want to complete in a day. That is being a busybody. It's aimless. Efficiency means you're aimed. You might do one thing, but it is the thing that takes you forward versus doing 10 things or 100 things that you're spinning in circles. Right? So just being encouraged by that. Um, okay, I talked about the blessed are the poor and how like when we are poured out, he fills us up, similar to his power is made perfect in our weakness, right? When we're empty, there's room to be filled with him. But so how does this challenge all of these, right? The poor, the hungry, those who weep, how does it challenge your definition of success and happiness? I don't even know if I like success there because I'm so intentional on definitions, and success literally means like proceeding through the stages, like progress is what success is. Like you get to a certain level by going through each level. It's the success. But I think about fulfillment, and how I talk a lot about fulfillment is that we're consumed by him. He fills us from the inside out. He is the source. And that the emptier we are, the more room we have to be filled, right? And that's what fulfillment is, fully filled. And he is the fullness of life. He fills us fully. So it's literally fulfillment. He is fulfillment. But how this challenges your understanding of fulfillment then, right? And what have you learned about fulfillment? And maybe define fulfillment and find some verses. Find the verses where God talks about how we are fully filled, how he fills us with the fullness of life and all of that stuff, right? And just what you've learned about that being true. Because even when it says happiness, happiness isn't really a word in the Bible. It's blessed, blessedness, but how that is what blessing is. Well, and I guess it says blessed are the poor. So it's almost like saying, if we want to now make it modern day, like happy are the poor, happy are the hungry, happy are those who weep. And it's like, why? How? I think too, because they are in union with the Lord, they're dependent on him. They're not fighting, right? Independent people are fighting dependence. You're so afraid to depend. These people ain't got a fight in them. They know they depend on the Lord. So that means that they are easily abiding. They are in constant union with him, and they are feeling his power flow through them always, right? They are connected to him because he is the only thing that can get them through, the only thing that can fill them up. They do not have self in there fighting with the Lord. And so how that again just challenges what we think about ourself and how we're going to find happiness and we're going to pursue it and we're going to succeed and we're going to all that stuff with fulfillment, but how the true satisfaction is when you are emptied out so he can fill you up. That's when you get consumed. That's when you get satisfied. Right? When you talk about eating, satiation means you lose your appetite, like you have been satisfied. And think about it with the world. We don't lose our appetite. It never actually satisfies. You want more and more and more because it doesn't satisfy. Where the Lord satisfies, because also, even when we want more and more, there is more of him. There is always more. As we increase in capacity, he can fill us up more with more of him. And he's never not enough, right? He's infinite. So he's always going to fill us up. We're going to stay in this constant place of fullness. Okay, I'm preaching. I need to write that down. Because we want more and more. That's why we say things like, I want more of you, less of me. Okay. Jesus warned about the dangers of being too comfortable in worldly wealth, status, and popularity. Let me see what verses it's saying. Oh, it's saying like when you're rich, you've already received your comfort, right? You're well fed. So it's like all of that. So the warning against those who are comfortable in the world, right? You have your wealth, your status, your popularity. And what ways do you see this in today's culture? I feel like it is today's culture. And I feel like it's obviously been the culture always. Nothing's changed. We think that the Bible is culturally irrelevant, but it shows that like the true underlying like principles of culture have remained exactly the same. You either are obsessed with wealth, status, and popularity, or you serve. And you realize that wealth actually comes from the Lord. The wealth, the abundance comes from the inside out, not a bunch of possessions. So in what ways do you see this in today's culture? And how can you be different? How can you actually want to be the first half, not the second half? The ones that are blessed, not the ones who have woes. Which, like I said, is the humility thing. Keep pouring yourself out. Keep putting yourself at rock bottom so he can lift you up. You put yourself down, right? And not meaning like verbally, like talking negative. I'm saying like lay your life down. You keep laying your life down and he fills you up. You pour it out again. You pour it out at his feet. This is where it becomes a flow versus a hoarding. The woes go to the people that are hoarding. The Lord fills them up and then they just hold on to it. Self-preservation. Don't break me. Don't take it. Don't have it. No generosity. Versus the flow is you fill me up and I pour it out. And you fill me up and I pour it out, right? Like that is the flow because you know more's coming, right? The other is a scarcity mindset. This, it even feels right now super spiritual, like flowy. Like it's just so, you know, there's more, there's abundance. He's the source. Let it flow through you. So how can you keep your focus on the eternal rewards. And I think it's more, how can you apply what I just said? Be in a flow. Give. He says that later. Give and it will be given to you. How can you believe and trust and know that if he's the source, the healthiest place to be is in a flow? So how can you practice giving and believing that abundance is coming from within, like you will be filled up again, versus hoarding and being so afraid to give because you don't want to lose anything? And is that you? How do you deal with generosity? How do you deal with giving? Do you hoard? Do you hold in all the treasure you receive, all the, things along the way because you don't want to lose them? This is why it's called casting your crown, right? It's like he gives you a crown and then you lay it down at his feet. Right? It's the mutualness. Not he gives you a crown and then you're like, I have a crown, like a little kid playing dress up. Like you're not just like, me, look at this crown. It's like he gave you the crown. So he gives you the crown and then you lay it down, you give it back. And that's where we just want to hold on to it. We're like, my crown. Okay, so Jesus says to love our enemies, to do good to those who hate us, to pray for those who mistreat us, right? Is there someone in your life, I would say think of right now, that you would consider an enemy that you can love, that you can start loving? Even if it's a group of people, whatever it is, who is your enemy? Who do you consider your enemy? You treat like your enemy. You actually think maybe it's more you think that they treat you like an enemy, right? It's more they're acting like you're the enemy, whatever it is. Wherever there's dissension, wherever there's, a distance, and how you can love them. And then those who hate you, if there's someone who you think hates you, how you can do good to them. And then also, who can you pray for? Who has mistreated you that you can pray for? I love that. Pray for those who mistreat us. Who do you need to pray for? Right? All of this is love, that you're going to love, you're going to do good, and you're going to pray. That's your response. Jesus also tells us to give without expecting anything in return, right? That it's easy to love those who love you. It's easy to do good to those who do good to you, right? There's no pat on the back for that. It's easy to give to those that you know are going to pay you back. But he says give without expecting anything in return. So how can you be more generous and selfless? And I love this, in relationships. Not just how can you be generous where it's like I lended you some money and it's okay, you can keep it. I think this is where people struggle a lot, is being generous in relationships. People say, I'm just giving and giving and giving, and they don't give back. And I love that. God is ... and ? You give in the relationships. Now, this is not about being abused, right? That's completely different. This is not about talking about romantic relationships. That's a whole nother conversation. And that is like marriage covenant. There's some other stuff that needs to be talked about there, of if you're really even operating in that place. Are you equally yoked, right? There's a difference between how you treat a romantic partner, but just in relationships where you feel like you're the friend that gives more. It's like, good. Be the friend that gives more. Be the employee that gives more. Be the person that is generous and selfless. And you're not always thinking about, what am I going to get out of it? I've said this to so many people too, of they're not ready for a relationship because everyone talks about, like, I deserve to be loved. Who's going to love me? And it's like, first of all, God is the one that's loving you and filling your cup. But when we think, I want to get married, I want to be in a relationship and date someone, and then they break up because they're like, well, they didn't do enough for me. And it's like, your mindset in your relationship always needs to be what you are doing for them, right? And then their mindset, they'll go to the Lord, and their mindset should also be based on even this verse, what they are going to do for you. We also don't compare. You don't say like, I did the dishes and I made the bed and I walked the dogs, and what did you do? All right? Because from their point of view, their capacity might be less. Like, them giving a lot to you might be them, and I hate, it's like not even the love languages thing, because that's not biblical, but it's like, to them, giving might be that they let you, I don't even know, that like when they let you make the plans, and you might be thinking, I always make the plans. And they're thinking, well, you like to do that, and I let you do that. Just that us being so negative towards other people because they're not doing enough or what we want them to do. And it's like, who even said that those tasks that you just listed that you did are even of value? It's like, if you don't do the dishes, I'd be glad to, but like, don't hold it over my head because you did it, and that kind of thing. Or, people wanting to be, more like you be more affectionate or something like that. And you might think that you're showing them love by how much time you give them. You might be like, I literally sit with you at breakfast every single morning. And at the end of the day at work, like we get together and I ask you how your day is, and I care and I'm intentional and I'm thoughtful. And, I always am buying your favorite snacks and putting them in the pantry. And I write like, and whatever. And then we're sitting there and it's like, why didn't you write me a love note? Why didn't you buy me flowers? And it's like, they're thinking I did all this other stuff. Um, right. But so then just stop focusing on what they're doing to you. Appreciate anything's a bonus. I always think of it like this. God fills my heart up. Anything that anyone does for me is a bonus, but I do not expect it. If they do it, cool, awesome, fun. But I don't expect it. And then my role is just that I love them. I'm constantly thinking of ways that I can make them feel good. And I can, and again, love is not even just about the good feelings of how can I do thoughtful things for them. It's more, how can I forgive them when they've screwed up? How can I have grace for them when they are growing and maturing and kind of stumbling along the way? That is where love really gets shown. Not did I, rub their back when they got home. Right? There's those kinds of things, and those are nice gestures, but it's more, am I going to stick with them through the tough times and not be a quitter and not be a leaver, right? Those things are where love is really going to make itself evident. And it's at the expense of yourself. It's like, yeah, it might be easier to leave. They might have insulted you, but how can you have grace and forgive them and come back and continue walking with them, not leave? Okay. So, right, Jesus talks about the hypocrisy of us judging others. So how can you focus on your personal growth rather than judging others? You shouldn't even have time to think about what other people are doing because you are focused on your own growth. And you got a lifetime of it. It's not going to go away. And he does say when you've tackled a certain area, like then it makes you think of Peter when he got sifted. And he says, Peter, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat. And I pray that your faith will stand so that when you get through this, you can turn around and help your brothers. But it's not coming from an arrogance place. It is going to come from such a humble place because you've been through it and you're going to know exactly what it feels like and how hard it is. And you're going to be patient with them and all of that stuff. You're not going to be critical the way that judging is. And we're not the judge. Like we literally don't have enough information to judge, and we have too much bias. We put too much emotion in. We think we're better than. The comparison thing starts to happen. That's not what true judgment is. That's not good judgment. Judgment goes back to the Lord, right? Cause and effect. There should be no emotion. It's like a boundary. It's a wall. It's a fixed, established line, and it's not about any sort of like. I think of, gosh, I guess it's bias is the best word. So anyway, how can you focus on your personal growth, which will keep you busy every day for the rest of your life, rather than judging others? And then again, once you've grown in certain areas, you'll want to share your testimony and you'll help others transform, but it won't be judging. You will never have time to judge in your life again. So right, think about that personal growth. If you want to walk through personal growth, come hang out with me and I will coach you through it. We'll walk through it together because I love it. I'm all about it. And then with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. So how can you be more gracious and merciful in the way you treat others? Just like he says, treat others the way you want to be treated. The measure you use is what's measured against you. So is your measure gracious? Is your measure merciful? And how can you be even more gracious and merciful? It should be to the point where it is completely like obsolete. Like you've omitted judgment entirely. You are just full of grace and mercy because you want grace and mercy, right? So how can you be more gracious and merciful in the way you treat others? What is your measuring stick? Do you give yourself more grace than others? You're critical of them. And then for you, again, it's like, I don't forgive anyone around me, but when I mess up, I need them to forgive me. I expect them to forgive me, right? You mess up at work and you beg your boss to forgive you and they do, they give you a second chance. But if someone messes up with you, you're like, no second chances, right? What measurement are you using? Okay, love this. Check your fruit. I always say it, check your fruit. Jesus says a tree is known by its fruit. So what kind of fruit is your life producing? What kind of attitude? What kind of actions? What kind of words? Right? And I said there can be certain areas where you just see like I keep failing in this area. So look at that fruit. That area you're producing bad fruit and you got to get to the root. And same thing, if you want to work on it, come hang out with me. Come into the app, come into the course, come coach with me. We will get to the root and figure out what is going wrong because you're not going to change the outputs of whatever you're inputting. You don't get to stay exactly the same and expect the fruit to change. This is where you're on a merry-go-round. It's a revolving door. You don't like the fruit and you're trying to change the fruit, but you're not changing yourself. You have got to transform. And I feel like even if you know that that's what you need to do, the next question is how, right? So, like I said, I'd love to walk through that with you. But look at your fruit. Where do you have bad fruit, and realize that you don't just get to pick the bad fruit off and try again. You don't strive in self-effort to be like, I'm going to make new fruit. You're going to have to get to the root of the problem, which is in your heart. Something that you're believing is wrong, something that you're feeling is wrong, something that, the beliefs are what determine the feelings and ultimately the choices. So something is off there in your heart. But look at your fruit. Maybe write down some certain areas that you just see that you're failing. Why does it keep failing? And then see if you can reverse engineer to what is the root that keeps causing that. And it's hard. Self-awareness is hard. That's why, again, it's good to have help, because I've walked with a lot of people and it's really hard to watch how blind they can be. It's blind spots. It's literally blind spots. Like we were saying before. Okay, so he says merely hearing the word is not doing enough. You need to put it into practice, right? And this is where I said obedience by definition means that you hear something and you do it. Disobedience by definition is that you hear something and you don't do it. But either way, you heard. You were told, you were called, God spoke, right? So when he speaks and you don't do it, and this is where he talked about the difference between the houses, right? So it says, in what area do you need to take action based on Jesus's teaching? But I would just think in all areas, because it's going to come up constantly every single day for the rest of your life. Do you obey or disobey? This is what we're used to. As we go into resistance and rebellion, we are used to disobedience. When we hear a word, we try to control it. We don't want that input to get that output. We want to find another way. And we're constantly in this rebellion against the Lord of, I'm going to find a different way to get what I want. And the Lord's like, there's only one way to get what you want. Right? Like I said, like you can either take a left and end up in Baltimore, or you can take a right and end up in Tampa. But you don't get to take a left and decide it's going to take you to Tampa. That's where we get frustrated, is we're like, I want to go left, but it's not going to take me to Baltimore. And he's like, no, but literally left is going to take you to Baltimore. Like it's just how it is. That's the design. That's the direction. And we try to fight it, and it's futile, and we waste so much time. That's why I said with the houses, it was like they both built the house. One is on a firm foundation, one is on sand, or one had no foundation. They both spent their time building a house, but one person completely wasted all their time. You built the house entirely and then it just all got destroyed. That's why it feels like devastation, because you build parts of your life and they get completely destroyed. And it was like you wasted it from the beginning. You just needed to get it right. It's like a tree without a root system. A tree is going to blow over in the wind. But so anyway, that you put it into practice. And so just what is your response to the Lord? And how can you start saying, we said this yesterday, I will. Here I am, Lord, send me. I will. Yes. Okay. Right? Whatever he says to do, just know that's the truth. Like I said, you're going to find the truth either way. You either build the house and it withstands the storm and you see that was the truth, or you build the house that is on no foundation that crumbles, and you also find out the truth that the other way was better. So you're either going to take the right way and realize it's better and it's fruitful, or you're going to take the wrong way and realize the other way was better because your way is fruitless. So same answer. It's just how are you going to get there? And you're using your life to get to those answers. But why would you want to deal with all that heartbreak and all that wasted time and all of that? Now, he will redeem the years the locust stole. So it's like when we finally pivot back and repent and come to the Lord, like he is good. He works all things out. But just think of it that way. Like just be obedient, right? I think about the Israelites that didn't get to go into the promised land. Like you're getting in your own way. You're making something take longer than it has to take, kind of thing. And so just how can you in your heart choose obedience? Choose that you will be obedient no matter what. Because why would you not? Why are you going to keep being resistant? Disobedience shouldn't even be a choice. Like when your heart changes, you just realize it doesn't even matter. I don't even need to hear the question. My answer is yes. I don't even need to hear the command. My answer is yes, right? It's like that kind of thing. Not tell me, Lord, let me chew on it and debate between obedience and disobedience. Like there is no debate anymore. Disobedience is off the table. You just don't even choose it. But so how can you continue to put into practice? Because you are hearing what he says, and you have gotten really good at rejecting his phone calls versus answering them. You've gotten really good at going the opposite direction of what he said to do. So how can you grow in obedience? And then the houses. So the wise man built his house on a strong foundation. What does your life's foundation look like? So same thing, you'd be able to tell because your house would be firm. And I said, your house would withstand storms. So how are you in storms? Right? When things get shaken in your life, does everything crumble and fall? Because that means it was a lie. That means it was not built on firm foundation. It crumbles, which is fine because your ground zero gives you the chance to build the house right. Or did you build it on a firm foundation? So when it's shaken, it stands. And at the end, I've told you this is what he says in the armor of God. God has always said the way we fight our battles is we stay standing, last man standing. It's not about us trying to jump in and fight. It's just about us standing, remain, 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 remain. And how, too, when you build the house on the firm foundation, you only have to build one house. You just build it once, and then you get to live in it. But the other one is you're building a lot of houses that you never get to live in. So what does your foundation look like? I remember this. I remember being like, I almost had built like my own Tower of Babel is what I called it. I was like, I've just built this tower and it just had to come crashing down. But I was like, but now I get to start over and I get to say, okay, Lord, you and I are going to build a house together. We're starting from scratch. Right? So the sooner you start from scratch, the better, because you can keep being stubborn and try to do it your way. And you're going to keep like having the chance to start from scratch with God. And every time you don't, you're just wasting more time versus like rather than sitting in the devastation, having a pity party, you look around at ground zero and you're like, okay, let's do this. Like we can build a new house now and we're going to do it right this time. But so what your foundation looks like, and this is how can you strengthen it through faith and obedience, but I wouldn't even say strengthen it. It's just Christ. Continue to draw near to Christ, spend one-on-one time with him, build your relationship with him, because I think of in Corinthians when it says that there is no other foundation that we build upon except for Christ. And then it literally says that we will spend our time building. It's the same thing, right? They tie together. It says you will spend your time building, and what will happen is what you built is tested in the fire. So it's the same thing as kind of like in the storm, like trial by fire, right? You're being tested and proven. And it says like those that build something that will withstand the fire, right? That is their reward because you've built something with the Lord and it will withstand the fire. It's eternal things, it's kingdom things, it's heavenly things. You let the Lord build through you and with you. Versus the other, he says, you will build with silver and gold and it will not withstand the fire. So this is like the possessions and just the worldly stuff. Like you've just wasted your time with that, which won't last. And he says, you'll build something. This is the house on sand and it won't withstand the fire. And it says, but you will like barely escape kind of thing. It almost makes you think of like there's like a singe on your garments. It's like you'll escape the fire, but nothing you made will. Like all your efforts were in vain. And so anyway, just how Christ is the only foundation. So just look at your house, see if you need to get back to the foundation. Maybe you need to knock some things down, and that's hard. And so sometimes it's like we say we want to knock it down, but fasting is really good to do that. But if you don't have the ability to destroy your own world, then that's why when you pray and you say, God, take these things away from me. Like if it's not of you, if it's not going to be fruitful, if it's not going to last, take it away. And then you wake up in a demolition zone. It's a good thing, right? He knocked it down. It's like, thank you. Thank you for knocking the things down that I didn't even know needed to be knocked down so we can start over. But start over now, sooner than later. Why would you want to start over a year from now or a decade from now? Start over now if you need to. And you'll know because it's like, have you built all the things? Have you built your career? Have you built your relationship? Have you built whatever on Christ? And even with a relationship, what I love is if you're in a marriage, if you're in a covenant, he talks with a praying spouse. That is not one where demolition means you leave. It means that it might get to a very vulnerable place, but that's good. You're going to have tough conversations in your marriage. You're going to get to the point where you are exposed and you are putting Christ first and you're saying, this is the way this marriage is going to go now. And you let him be the foundation and you trust that if you put Christ as the foundation and the thing, doesn't work, then it needs to go versus it'll shock you. And I've seen this now enough times in people's life. Like when you do it God's way, if you actually were to like have that tough conversation with your spouse, you think, oh, I'm going to bother them. They're going to be upset. They're going to leave me. You have that conversation, you put Christ at the center and actually your relationship becomes stronger than it had ever been. And you two transform together and you carry each other and and even if they do get mad at you, like it's like they might get mad for a couple days and they come around and you're like, honestly, I had a dream last night or the Lord has been stirring my heart or like, I feel like you're right in what you're saying. So it's like, let people process and go through what they need to go through too. They might not, just like with Mary and Joseph, the Lord came to Mary and said she was going to have Jesus and he had to go meet Joseph separately and not even like on the same day. It was like, she comes to Joseph and says, I'm going to be pregnant. And he's like, okay, well, under the radar, like, we'll just get divorced. Like, I don't even want to marry you. And then the Lord comes to him later. So it's like letting the Lord come to your spouse at a different time than you, but you put him first and trust that that is the firm foundation. And so, anyway, knowing that it's Jesus. And so what does that mean? It means building a relationship with Christ. And so this is where two, it's like if you want to have God in your life every day, this is why we do Bible study here, but I have an app called Everyday Vita. It's like spending every day with the Lord in the sense of relationship, not out of obligation, but realizing that like loving him, worshiping, praying, having him be a part of your decisions and your career and your friendships, and just learning what it's like to spend every moment with Jesus. It's not a pie chart. You don't split up your day into different slots of time and Jesus or the Lord has one slot. He is the entire thing. He is with you in the entire thing, and all these other pie chart decisions you're making in parts of your life. He's with you at work. He's with you in your family. He's with you in your hobbies. And he's with you with your gifts and your passions. He's with you with your finances. It's like all those areas, he's in them with you. It's like realizing it's a marriage, it's a covenant. Nothing is going to change that and just that relationship. And so you're starting to realize, whoa, me being with the Lord and being yielded and just abiding in him and being in this constant union is what is going to make me healthy and make everything in my life healthy. And so, like I said, just realizing it's not as hard as we make it. It's actually beautiful. And I'm, creating tools that help you be able to like make him the foundation of your life so that you are safe and secure and you are fruitful and you multiply and just all the good things. So those are the questions for Luke chapter 6. So take it to heart, spend some time on it. There were some big lessons to learn. It's easy to say, harder to do. So let some of this stuff become real to you, that this is what Jesus said and taught and what his ministry actually is, and how it's not just about a bunch of rules. It's actually tough things like love your enemies and give without expecting in return and don't judge people, right? It's like all those things where you're like, whoa, those are really hard. Those are actually hard to do, but they're the thing we all say we want. We all want peace. We all want love. We all want everyone to just get along. And it's like, well, that's how you do it. So what are you going to do about it? Okay. I just hope that you guys have a blessed day. May God bless you so that you can bless others. May you spend time with him and let his light shine upon you so that you are filled with light and that you are a light to the world, that you are filled with love and that you can pour love out of the world, that you are fully filled, that he is the source of the love that you need, the goodness that you need, that you build with him so that you are firm, that you are on truth, that you can stand so that when things are shaken around you, that you can endure it with him, right? He is our strength. So anyway, all of that in Jesus' name, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.